Hello everyone. It is the much awaited for video by many of you. Today we're talking about working more with the Mystical Moments Tarot. So many of you have asked me to do this video and I totally get it because the Tarot of Mystical Moments, I always say the name of it wrong. I just did say it wrong. Sorry guys. The Tarot of Mystical Moments by Katrin Weltz-Stein, which this is a collage style tarot deck, by the way, is one of those decks that's just a sassy, saucy little minx. And she can be really testy and yet totally worth putting in the time and effort to get to know her to work with. So we're going to talk about some ways that you can connect with her today if you've been struggling. I'm just going to share some thoughts that I have on working with the deck in general in this video as well. So first of all, the artwork is absolutely stunning if this type of artwork is your cup of tea. The cardstock is really shiny, but it is gilded in silver, and it you know, that makes it very sumptuous. It's very easy to do like dream work or storytelling with. This is a great deck for that energy because there is such a lush, like jewel tone saturation to this deck that's really, really enjoyable. At least for me, I find it's a very easy realm to step into and to spend a lot of time daydreaming in. Right? Like it's a beautiful realm for that. And I think if you're someone who enjoys reading like Wuthering Heights or anything like that, in that type of feel and genre, like jaded fairy tale type of energy, you're probably going to like working with this deck. Or no, I shouldn't say that. You'll probably love the artwork in this deck. So let's talk a little bit about working with her. This is one of the very few decks that I do use reversals for because oh my, this deck will not let you not use reversals. This is a deck that's very clear about like the dark shadow side to things, and it's going to kind of push you to deal with that when you work with this deck. So like when I'm feeling really sensitive and raw, which I definitely have been the last few weeks, this is not a deck that I work with, because this deck is really like gives you the unfettered truth at times, and sometimes we're not in a place to do that. Shadow work is not an all the time thing, and I think, you know, part of my bitch around shadow work becoming popular is that it becomes like shadow work light and people want to do it all the time. Shadow work is really deep. I'll use the word raw again. Strong, intense work, and it's not meant to be done all the time. You do that work when you're in the right headspace for it, when you're grounded enough in your body to deal with and acknowledge a lot of the core wounds that are going to show up when you go looking for them. So this is a deck that's going to show you those things, at least in my experience. And so I don't work with this deck all the time. I do use this deck a lot in readings, but I especially don't use this deck all the time for myself when I am in a more sensitive, raw, exposed feeling space, and I don't want someone pushing on an open wound, you know? So I would say if you find that you are not able to, you know, that you're not using this deck all the time, don't give up on it right away, because very much like the Chicoli Tarot that I can't live without, but I don't use constantly, this deck falls into that same energy for me. You're very much stepping into another realm, and you're working with the cards in a way that's going to show you things like mirror. When I'm doing this, I'm like, you know, mirror reflection here that are not always comfortable to look at, to see about yourself or about a situation or about what's to come or about what lies underneath something. So just know that this is one of those decks that's like a very specific type of tool in your tarot kit, right? So you're going to work with it, at least I have found, at very specific times for very specific understanding of things. So for instance, as I just said, storytelling, shadow work, understanding kind of what's underneath the pretty front of a situation, right? This is the deck that's going to help you to do that type of work, at least in my experience. And I know one of you did say, you had left me a comment recently on this deck that she's very chatty and that you don't do just daily draws with her. I will say after my initial getting to know her time when I was doing daily draws with her, I actually agree with this viewer. I tend to do spreads with this deck. And especially in reading for clients, it's not a one card draw deck. It's not I don't use this deck as a clarifier to another deck. I will clarify this deck with other decks, but I don't use this deck as a clarifier to other decks. But this deck is chatty once you talk to her. She is chatty. It's just not about necessarily what you want to talk about. She's going to talk about what she's here to talk about. And so this definitely is a deck that's very much spread heavy for me. And I don't really turn to it for my daily draw, you know, ruminating over tea with my journal. I more work with this deck when I'm looking at what's going on underneath the situation. What am I bringing to the table that I don't necessarily want to look at? Or what is like a truth that I don't want to acknowledge here? I will absolutely pull from this deck for that. It's also a great deck for divination. I do feel that this deck is very honest and clear around divining strong possibilities for you in the future. So, you know, if you want to know, is that relationship going to work out? Or should I take the new job offer? Or what happens if I move? Those type of questions, this deck definitely will answer very clearly for you. Again, not just the positive side though. So if you only want to know the positive side of divination for down the road, this isn't your deck, because this deck is going to let you know, yeah, you know, that person's probably lying, or they probably don't have good intentions in this situation. Or yes, you're going to make the move and long term it's good, but here's some of the things that are going to happen that's going to, you know, be intense, or that you might view as something negative that occurs within the situation as well. So it's very much that type of deck. It's a fully fledged, very alive personality. And I do think you have to understand that she's a saucy wench. She's a sassy bitch. And it's going to be, you're going to step into another world with her. But again, you don't control the world. It's her world, you're in it. That's the way that this deck feels for me. So let's talk about how you can work with her if you're struggling to find your way into the realm that is Tarot of Mystical Moments, which I always have to keep looking at the title because I don't know why. I mean, you guys know I've been working with this deck for a while. I always forget the actual name of this deck. I want to call it Tarot of Magical Moments. I want to call it Mystical Moments Tarot. I don't end up saying it right. So if you are struggling with getting to know her, but you don't want to get rid of her, and you're finding that like you're not even called to do shadow work with her, you just feel confused by her, the first thing that I want to recommend to you is she is a little bit different than straight up Rider-Waite-Smith. So read the guidebook. Now, she is a Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, but the author and the artist, because I do believe it's by the same woman, right guys? Yeah. She does not go off course, but yes, traditional Rider-Waite-Smith meanings, but she also provides some really deep insights into the cards. This is one of those decks that like made me just get real about Seven of Swords, and like there's no way that Seven of Swords isn't Seven of Swords, which yes, we know that, but especially her key words in this guidebook, I was like, wow, there's no way that I can interpret this Seven of Swords as something that's not cool that's going on, you know? So I would say if you're struggling, read the guidebook. This is a time when you may want and wish to do daily draws with her, because if you're like me, so I am a full-time single mom, and I get up at 5 a.m. in the morning so that I can have an hour to myself before my son gets up so that I can do my spiritual practice. And so if you're like me and you have to schedule in that time and you have that kind of finite amount of time to connect with your daily draw, I would offer to you that you can look at, while you may not use this deck for a daily draw once you get to know it, working with it from a daily draw perspective, will help you to give yourself the time to reference the guidebook, journal about what comes up for you as you're looking at the card imagery, and start to create your own language with the deck. Because I think ultimately what ends up happening with this deck is that you're going to create your own language, which is an amalgamation of Rider-Waite-Smith meaning, the artist and author's interpretation, and your own language with the deck. So this is a deck. This isn't like for most people, this isn't a deck where you're going to be like, immediately open her and know her. You're going to have to spend time with her. So daily draws at the beginning, referencing the guidebook, journaling about what comes up for you around the card. That can be a really great way in to the realm that is this deck. Like, I really do look at this deck, not just as a personality, and as her own being. She's more of a realm to me. It's like stepping into a dreamscape. It's like stepping into another reality, another space. And you have to get to know the landscape as well as the feeling of the deck. So what is the landscape for you? This can be a way into this deck for you. So you may find that doing daily draws with her, even though once you get to know her, at least for me and several others of you who have shared with me, she's a chatty girl. And so you're gonna probably be drawn to draw more than one card from her when you work with her. Daily draws can be very helpful. Also, I really can't recommend enough a get to know you spread for your deck. That is something that over the years of my working with tarot has really helped me into a deck, especially if I'm struggling with connecting with it. So there are so many get to know you deck spread options out there. I think I have one on the channel from way back. And there's plenty that you can find online with a simple Google search or search on Instagram or whatever. But a get to know you spread can help you to understand her. I would encourage you to really kind of create the spread yourself though, in a way, if you can, so that you can fine tune. That's how I want to say that. You can take like the bare bones of someone else's get to know you deck spread and kind of fine tune it with this one. So like I would include questions around, how are you meant to work with me? What type of work are we meant to do together? How can I best get to know you? What is your landscape? What is the realm that I'm stepping into when I work with you? Kind of fine tune some of those questions in the spread to speak to this deck, and I think you'll get a lot out of that introductory spread with the deck. So here's that Seven of Swords. And this was when I knew I had to use reversals with this deck, because the guidebook meaning drastically changes in reversal, if I recall correctly, with this card. And I was like, okay, I have to use reversals with this deck, because it's not immediately like Tarot of Vampires for me. I know automatically when the card's in shadow and I don't need to use reversals with it. It has a different feeling. This deck, again, can be a little harder for me to be clear with her, especially when it comes to my own personal card work. So I do find that using reversals makes a difference. But so try daily draws, try an introduction, get to know you deck spread with her. Then the other thing that I like to do with this deck is actually have a conversation with her. So just as an example, you can be like, you can ask the deck, like, where are you today? And then draw a card, 8 of Wands. The deck is in a place of wanting action. It's in an active space. And then you can say, okay, where am I today then? So that's where you are. Where am I at? I'm Knight of Swords. I want to take action too, but I want to take action with the air element, not the fire. So we're air and fire today. How are we going to interact together? So how do we interact together? 3 of Cups. Oh, celebration, joy, friendship coming together. This deck is a friend of mine. Okay. What do I need to know today? King of Pentacles. It's important for me to put time and attention and energy into growing what I deem as my security and abundance, and also to be clear and strong in my sense of self. And so that is the message the deck has for me today. Let's say I have something I need to do later. What do I need to know about, I don't know, the lunch I have to attend? The world. There's a summation of a storyline within this lunch. There may be some success, but there's also an understanding, a clear understanding of the ending of a chapter, maybe in regards to whoever I would be meeting for this lunch if I was actually going to a lunch today. But that's an example of how you can chat with the deck. Talk to her, and she will give you answers to those specific questions you have. I do find if I don't have specific questions for her, she can really be very, very loquacious to the point where I'm like, you're giving, like, it's so much information. It's so much. I need you to hone it down for me and get specific. So I tend to ask really specific questions of this deck. And then she's just like, bam, 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 bam. Unless I'm approaching her intentionally to do shadow work. And then I kind of want her to take the long winding road. So that's when I'm going to let her off the rein, off the leash, and let her run wild. And I would say if you're going to do that with this deck, give yourself time, especially if you're looking at shadow aspects with her. Don't be in a space where you have to rush that process, because you're going to extract a lot of sweet from the story that she gives you around that shadow work piece, but she's going to go full bore when she goes. And so you're going to need time, energy, and space to listen, to understand, and then to do, I would encourage guided journey work around integration after you spend that time with her. So that's a recommendation I have for you as well. But I would definitely say, you can see that the reversals are coming up here in the deck. I would definitely say ask her pointed, specific questions. Once you kind of get into knowing her after daily draws and some, get to know me spreads, I would say then ask her specific questions, but draw a few cards. So let me see if I can give you an example of that. So let's say I want some information on, what's a good question that could apply for all of us? Let's say I want some information on what I should be focusing on in my spiritual practice at this time, right? So I'll draw one, 5 of Cups. Okay, so I need to look at wounding from the past. Then I'll draw a few more cards. The Sun and the Ace of Swords. So I'm looking on my spiritual path. There's a focus in my shadow work on dealing with past pain. But I also have the Sun and the Ace of Swords. So it's also about the joy and the newness. So is there a new practice that I can embrace? One that's going to bring joy and light and fun. So I can see from these two cards that's something that I should be exploring. What's gonna like reinvigorate me in regards to my practice? Okay, so I asked that question. So so I have that understanding. Let's say I want a specific. Okay, so specifically what type of practice then would bring me Ace of Swords and the Sun? Ace of Pentacles, a practice that's grounded in the earth element. Like, and as I look at this, I feel like she's very connected to, like, she's out in the woods, right? So I can see that spending some time in the woods in a very playful state, perhaps even with my son, right? If I was looking at this as a personal spread interpretation here. But please apply this to yourself if it feels like it resonates for you. Time out in the woods, being playful and childlike, is going to help me to access the Sun and the Ace of Swords, which brings me to a new sense of awareness and clarity around what I'm healing from the past. So you see how drawing multiple cards and kind of having a conversation with her is really where it's at with this deck. And I think now that I've rambled for 18 minutes, if you are still with me, I would say this is a conversational, chatty deck. She's just really truthful and honest. So she may not be an all the time deck for you, but she'll definitely serve a very powerful, important, best friend purpose in your life. The responsibility lies within you of knowing when it's time to work with her and when you might need some space from her. So I hope if you've been struggling to connect with Tarot of Mystical Moments, did I say it right this time, guys? I did. Or if you love this deck and just wanted to hear me chat a little bit more about it, I hope you found this video helpful. I am sending you all, as always, so much love and many blessings. I will see you in the next video. Take care.